Hey, Rich, how you doing, sir?
Hey Len, we've got Thursday. It's great to be back here with you in another MSP Toolkit session. I know we had a lot of people really showing interest in this topic. It's a topic I've, personally seen you present to thousands of MSPs and others in the past, but I learned something new every time I hear you present it. And as a service provider myself in a little bit different field, but going back to our days at Autotask so many years ago, when we were talking about these things, it's just so important that people keep looking at how they're pricing, bundling, and what vendors they're choosing to put into their toolkit, right? So thanks for having me.
Constantly evolving topic.
Definitely. And so I know we have a lot of people joining us, and I know that you have a lot of experience in this that we really want to share with them rather than spending too much time, me and you catching up, because we can be doing that. I know we're going to an event together at PAX 8 Beyond coming up. I'm making my return to the channel event, so if anyone's going to be out there, I look forward to seeing you. And
Yeah,
Len,
matter of fact, Rich, you know what? Let's see. We got a question box in there, or a chat box. Not sure what y'all seeing out there, but is anyone out there going to PAX 8 Beyond in Denver, June 8th to 10th? Because Rich and I will be there. Put it in the chat window, or actually the question window. And
I mean, you guys might be seeing my my MSP Toolkit drip that I'm wearing on my head here. And we're really looking to talk to. I'm going to be out there working another project, but we're going to be talking to some MSPs about what they've got in their toolkit coming up here to really just share some of your guys' experiences with the community. So,
Rich, can somebody pop in a question, or maybe just let us know you can hear us? Let us know if you're going to PAX 8. Let us know where you're dialing in from.
Let us know if you got any other gifts that you guys.
Big Ron. Hey, Ron, how you doing out there, man? Great to see you. And I got quite a few folks in there that I recognize. So, hey, Rich, let's get rolling. We got everybody here, and people are filing in.
Yeah, Lenny, take it over for how to price and bundle profitable services to maximize revenue. I know we got a great quick hit session here that's going to talk about a customizable pricing model that everyone joining our call today can apply across their service catalog. Lenny, DiCostanzo, take it away.
Hey, sure. Hey, thanks. And Rich is with Akulian Creative. They've done a great job working with us here at MSP Toolkit, branding, getting the word out. We have a pretty massive webinar here today, so I want to thank everyone for joining us for our MSP Accelerator quick hit session, how to price and bundle profitable services to maximize revenue. And really the goal here is, these are some best practices I learned through my couple of decades as an MSP or a converted solution provider to MSP, and then working with my partners from Kaseya and Autotask and ConnectWise and all the different places I've worked as an employee and as a consultant. So I'm Len DiCostanzo, CEO at MSP Toolkit. Happy to be here on a great day. Sun is out here, and so let's get rolling. All right, actually, I just want to give a mention out. We are sponsored by Afire. Afire is building a SaaS management platform for MSPs, and very interested in helping you guys generate profits. So they've sponsored this webinar, and thanks to Afire for doing that. So again, Rich gave a brief introduction of myself, but I was an MSP actually back when we were called solution providers, late 90s, built a recurring revenue model. One of my original partners was an accountant. Believe it or not, I had one partner, and I learned the value of time. And we're going to talk a lot about time today. And bottom line is, time is a limited resource that we all have, and it's our billable resources that have to go out there and generate revenue. So I'm very familiar with transitioning to managed services from break fix, and here to share decades of pricing info. I've coached and collaborated with thousands of MSPs. Rich mentioned Autotask. I worked with Kaseya for a couple of years, delivered my MSP Accelerator session back then, showing folks how to transition to be an MSP. Joined Autotask for 11 years, merged with Datto, was there for a year, and since then I've been consulting with both vendors and MSPs, mostly with vendors on building partner programs and go-to-market strategy. And now I'm co-founder of Afire.ai, where we're building a SaaS management platform for MSPs. And I just want to make sure you realize, like, I've got an MSP accelerator program that I deliver to MSPs, but this is an excerpt from our pricing and bundling profitable services session, 3-hour workshop. I've kind of taken what I feel are some good pieces of content to share, but there's more behind it. A lot of tools and templates you can use that you're going to see today. So just want to let you know, it's kind of we call it a quick hit accelerator because it's a piece of session 2. So let's keep on going. So today my goal is to share a customizable methodology for pricing services in your catalog. And when I say your service catalog, it's really products, services, and all the different services you deliver, whether it's break fix, because break fix doesn't go away no matter how many times people want to talk about break fix going away. You got managed services now through automation, not only with an RMM, but now you got SaaS management platforms. You've got RPA out there. So we're going to talk about a customizable pricing methodology that hopefully can adapt as you grow the business and add tools. And what we're going to do is first share the benefits of a solid pricing strategy, and then talk about key variables actually tied to hourly rates. Not sure, I reviewed this a million times, but review key variables that are impacting your pricing model. We're going to walk through an hourly rate calculation, and even though we're going to talk automation, you're still going to have people, resources, managing your tools, facing your clients, answering the phone. So we do want to understand the value of time, because that's going to help us determine costs and profits for break fix services, time and material, professional services wrapped into project bundles. And then we'll kind of take those hourly rates and show how you can apply those rates to price your managed service bundles. And I think that's really the key here, is when you move into managed services, your costs and profits are still based on people, because people use the tools that deliver managed services. You just might be able to mark it up more because you have a lot of automation. But we're going to talk about managed service pricing and then apply that pricing across a couple of different managed service bundles. And we'll talk a little bit about it. And then I'll leave you with some next step action. So I want to highlight, we'll talk a little bit about selling tips, but it's really more about pricing. And in one of the sessions, we talk about how to sell your services to clients and how to market it. We'll try to touch on some key selling topics, but at this point, we're going to talk pricing. So first, actually, to kind of get everybody into the session a little bit, I want to maybe open up with a polling question just to kind of get a basis here for who's on the session. So first, I just want to understand, are you delivering managed services right now? Do you consider yourself a mature MSP? Are you working through your transformation to being an MSP? Perhaps you have some recurring revenue from managed services, but you're looking to generate more. Perhaps you're just getting started on your managed service journey. Maybe you're moving from a different business model to now an MSP model, maybe a TSB, technology service broker, technology service provider. Maybe you aren't and you just want to get started, right? You want to deliver managed services. And maybe you're not sure if you're delivering managed services, and that's okay too. So I just want to kind of get an idea of who is out there, and really good to see responses. I think, one of the things I did in my transition, I was break fix, and I remember going to my conference room and kind of praying for stuff to break back in the, say, 90s. And, that would allow me to go out and track time and bill it. And I just remember about 1996 or so, 7, when I had my business, which I sold in 2001, I was like, holy cow, I can't keep doing this. And I moved to a managed service or recurring revenue model way before it was called managed services. So I understood pricing from an hourly rate standpoint and kind of applied it across. So I'm going to show the poll, close it, and share it just so we can all see. So we got 58% that feel they are mature MSPs. So I'll be looking for some feedback for sure, whether in an email after the session, if this helped or not. If you're working through your transition, 23%, that's great. 12% getting started, and a small amount wanting to get going. So thanks for sharing that. It's great to hear. So let's get into, if we're going to talk about a pricing strategy, let's talk about why, right? I think one of the keys that I always talk about is you understand your service costs. If you develop a solid pricing strategy, you understand your service costs, and that allows you to plan profits for all your services in any manner you choose. So, we're going to touch on a couple of different ways you can plan profits, but I think once you understand your costs, and it's always been my premise, what does it cost me to deliver my service? Then you can price on value, you can price on markup, you can price on whatever it is that you want to price on. And really, you're going to have confidence selling your services. What does that mean? I know when I went in that I was going to price a project that I was going to have enough time to actually deliver the outcome my client wanted. I think too many times we underprice ourselves, and when you do that, you try to cut corners, you tend to cut corners. So I think the key here is that you'll develop confidence selling your services, and when you do that, you start out properly with a new client, and even your existing clients, you have an opportunity to really develop, maintain, and actually retain your clients better, because you're not nickel and diamond, and you're not hitting them for things that they didn't expect. And one of the keys here is, I'm not going to really mention all you can eat, but when you say all you can eat, but then you want to charge for different services, that's a problem. So you're going to be confident selling the services your client needs, and if they need more outside of what you're doing, they'll know they're going to be charged, perhaps from an a la carte menu, but you're going to develop and maintain steady client relationships and actually retain clients better. And I think really it's about improved financial planning, right? And budgeting and forecasting, because when you understand your costs and you understand the types of projects you do and what your managed services are and how many of them you need to survive and to not only survive but thrive, you're going to really be able to have a good kind of future for your business. You can see how much revenue you can generate and know how much you have to sell, and ultimately maximize profitable project and recurring revenue streams. And really, that's why you want to have a solid pricing strategy. Too many times, as I work with MSPs or IT service providers, they come up with pricing based on the competition, or they come up with pricing essentially throwing a dart on the wall without really analyzing their costs. And I think the key with pricing for me too is you want to apply pricing across multiple areas of your business. I think a lot of folks will go out there and do an assessment and do a proposal for free, and then your prospect goes and shops it around. I talk about consulting, right? And going in and doing an assessment that people charge for, and it results in a technology infrastructure. And then maybe you've done such a great job that you'll actually win that project and generate project revenue, a one-time project revenue stream for delivering that project. So charge for your assessments, what you're going to see on our hourly rates today, understand how long it takes to do a good assessment, come back with a proposal, call it an RFP to your prospect. They can go shop it, but if you do a great job, as I've seen, you win the business. And then bolt on managed services to every project and price those managed services profitably. So again, key is assessment, billing, project billing, and managed services all need to be priced profitably. And as you grow your business, you have additional pricing exercises to go through. We now have to include cybersecurity in our offerings, whether you're delivering it or you're delivering it with a partner. You have to deliver a project to roll out your cybersecurity, whether it's part of your initial infrastructure now, because these kind of two practices are combining, and then add on additional recurring revenue. And I always like to say, you come up with the pricing in the package you want your clients to have. I don't really ascribe anymore to a good, better, best. I think you have to go in and you understand the pain your client's going through. You need to price them out and going in and kind of price what your client needs. And it may include infrastructure, managed services through your RMM, through your service desk. I was over at Autotask. A big component is your service desk, your RMM, and now cybersecurity. But we're also getting into AI. Delivered an AI workshop for a client, a bunch of MSPs. You have to build a practice. You have to price your project. You have to price your managed services and bolt on more managed services to your existing pack. This is where I think you start to have a separate bundle, but it's not a bundle of good, better, best. It's a total additional solution that you're building. And here you see SaaS management, where a product like a Fire SaaS management platform comes into play. I think a lot of MSPs have lost control of their client SaaS ecosystems. And here you see a SaaS management project to develop a baseline of what your client has in terms of SaaS, and then some SaaS management managed services. So the key here is most MSPs, let me see if I can grab my pen here, but most MSPs get stuck. Oh, I don't know what I just did there, guys, but I just messed up. I zoomed in. But what I was trying to do is just show you that you have right here, your SaaS. I think a lot of MSPs now are getting stuck selling SaaS as a managed service without adding on all the things that go with it. You may be doing it here on your infrastructure, but with every solution you deliver, you should be coming up with managed services on top of that SaaS. And don't be a SaaS reseller and call yourself an MSP. So here you have kind of like the areas that I'm gonna kind of cover in terms of pricing. So let's talk about some key variables impacting your pricing model. And these business metrics, again, I always like to warn, I'm not an accountant. My original partner was an accountant, so I got a very deep knowledge of what I needed to do financially to run my business. So I think the key here is make sure you have financial professionals in your corner. You're a professional to your clients as an outsourced IT department. Generally, you're going to have a CPA, you're going to have a legal person, and these business metrics really come from your financial statements. We got overhead, which we're going to talk about in our pricing model. Burden, which is a variable a lot of MSPs don't really look at. These are the fringe benefits you decide on for your employees: Social Security, workers' comp, unemployment, various add-ons, I guess, to the compensation that you pay your people. Maybe you're giving them a phone. This is burden, and you need to calculate that, use that in your calculation for pricing. Direct labor, these are the costs that are associated when your resources are billing a client. And this really is tied to utilization. Like, what % utilization do you have for your engineers? And indirect labor is the time your billable resources are hanging out on the beach and not necessarily billing your client. And you want to minimize indirect labor, because direct labor and indirect labor impacts your overhead, as you can see here, right? If your overhead running your business is 200,000, and again, I'm just picking numbers here and working with them, you could have $1 million in overhead. You could have, 5 million, depending on the size of your MSP. But bottom line here is, with a 80% overhead, you're really going to have a difficult time being profitable. And the goal is to always have reduced overhead and increase your billing. And when you increase your billing, you reduce that indirect labor charge going into your overhead. And as you move into managed services, you tend to reduce your overhead as well. So here, just kind of keeping in mind, reduce your overhead. I think it's, maybe normal or common sense, if you will, and always want to increase your service revenue for those billable resources. And I think just highlighting burden rate is important. It's a number that when I've done the session and worked with MSPs in the past, they don't really look at it. I think people try to use the simple, 3x the cost of my body, and that's good, but being a little more scientific doesn't hurt. And here you see the average burden of 23%. As determined by research by UHY, a leading network of independent accounting and consulting firms. And here you see that the U.S. Small Business Administration really shares that the typical cost is 1.25 to 1.4 times the salary, so 25 to 40%. Again, depending on the fringe benefits you're providing your employees. So pay attention to overhead, pay attention to burden rate, and talk to your financial professionals for your values, as you're going to see right here for those key variables, because they're all part of calculating the cost to deliver service. So we're going to touch on 5 key variables here. First, we're going to talk about working hours, right? Typically 40 hours at 52 weeks. So a billable resource typically has 2,080 hours to bill, or at least those are the hours they're working. And we're going to talk about how those 2,080 hours get impacted over time by vacation and training and the like. We're going to use the burden variable, 30%, which are the taxes and benefits we just touched on. that vary by organization, resource, and geo. And we're going to touch on utilization rate. I like to look at utilization rate as a forecast of billable time, because as you're setting your pricing, you're going to look back in the past, see what your utilization is, and then kind of forecast, can I do that again? Can I improve? Or was my original forecast wrong and I need to reduce my utilization rate, which again would impact your pricing model. So utilization rate, a key variable. Overhead, we just touched on it. Control your overhead. We're going to use 30% in our pricing calculations, and markup of 30%. Now, markup is how you determine your profit margin, at least in these calculations. But I think the key here is that once you understand your costs, you can use the markup model, you can use value pricing, you can use risk-based pricing. I think those first 4 variables really drive you understanding your costs. And then you could really price, again, by markup, you can price by value, by risk. You know, everybody, you hear people talking about value pricing, but what does that mean? Hey, maybe your client needs you to give them a better SLA, right? So that there's more value to your service. Maybe they're more demanding, right? Maybe they're in a particular vertical that's more demanding. Maybe on risk-based pricing, they didn't let you go through and do a true assessment. Maybe they don't want to replace older hardware. Maybe they're more on-prem versus in the cloud. Maybe there's a really complex environment. And again, always SLA is impacting it. So the key is, again, understand your cost to deliver service, and considering your growth options as well. And you can calculate your service profits with any of these pricing for profit options. And we're going to work on markup today. So let's kind of dig in now, and we're going to determine costs and profits for your break fix, professional, and a la carte services, as well as your project bundles. And I can remember at the start of managed services, everybody talked about, you know, you're going to be able to get rid of technicians, and there's a lot of automation. And it's kind of like the paperless office. You need your people. Your people are delivering automated managed services. They got to work the tools, whether it's behind the scenes and you're distributing automations, whatever it may be. People are your business, and you need to really understand the cost of those people, which is why I give a warning here, because most technical folks don't really get into the numbers. Most business folks are getting into the numbers. We're going to kind of walk through an hourly rate calculation and give you an idea of how you should be looking at your variables and how to determine a true hourly rate. So let's say you have a $75,000 a year resource. And again, just picking a number and working that number, who has 2,080 hours of billable in a year. And again, even that number, 2,080, think about that number. One of the things I recall my accountant sharing with me back in the day was, you know, at 40 hours, anything above it was overtime. So he actually had me use 37, I believe, 0.15 hours as a working week, just so that I can stay below what would be considered overtime rates. So again, even something as simple as potential billable hours, you need to really think about it. If you do the math, that's a $36 an hour resource. We add that 30% burden, you now have that $75,000 a year resource costing you $97,500 or $46 an hour. Now we take out vacation, sick, training, or just non-working hours. This is maybe even a light number, but again, it's just a number. This is a calculator. I could put any number I want in there. Just doing this for illustration. And if you remove those hours, now there's only 1,920 hours for that resource to bill. But now we go to utilization. And if only 60% of that available time is billed, they're only billing 1,152 hours, driving your cost up to $85 an hour. Now you've got $39,000 shown up in your overhead. And for me, I always like to look at, you know, that $39,000 and try to kind of add it back into the cost of this resource, so that when I marked them up, they were kind of even covering their potential billable time, non-billable time, or indirect labor. So ultimately, this is the cost of having people on the bench. Enter in your overhead rate. This body costs you $110 an hour to deliver services. and you better be billing 126,000 a year, more than 126 if you want to make a profit. So that's where we pop in our markup of 30% and come up with $143 hourly rate. And I've seen a lot of $125 hour rates and lower. I've also seen higher hourly rates. And again, those rates should really be dependent on the cost, because at 143, this body's going to bill about 165,000 and generate about 38,000 in profit. So the key here is we'll use 110 as an hourly cost in our service examples, which kind of leads me here to a second polling question that I'd love to hear and be able to share. But, you know, seeing this hourly rate calculation, do you use something this detailed? Is this too detailed? Are you just kind of taking, you know, a guess at it? But do you recognize and use a similar process? If you're out there listening, come back in for the survey. You know, yes, but you don't break out burden. I put that in there because a lot of folks don't recognize burden as its own percent or value. No, your rates are based on the competition, or as I like to say, throwing a dart up on the wall. Maybe you don't use this pricing hourly rate calculation, but you want to, and maybe you're just not sure. And that's okay too, because perhaps the higher ups are making the rates for you. But a process like this, where you're going to pluck those 5 key variables, either from your financial statements and then either, you know, from your desire for profitability, it's really key to kind of have a scientific approach. So right now we've got quite a, you know, few of you voted. So I'm going to close the poll unless you want to stick something in. And let's see what we've got here. We'll share this poll. So we have 28% recognize and use a similar process. That's excellent. 20% yes, but you don't break out burden, and that's fine too. A lot of times folks will put burden in overhead, but I just want to understand, if you break out burden, your rates are based on the competition, and as 28%, I kind of caution on that, because again, we talked earlier, understand your costs, and that's really the key to pricing your services. So if you're pricing based on the competition, hopefully they're higher priced, but you know, you have to make sure again that it's profitable for you. Otherwise, either A, you're in the wrong market, B, maybe you're not selling your service right, maybe your overhead's too high, and 12% are not using, and 12% are not sure. So, you know, appreciate you guys sharing these numbers. Very important, I think, to make that happen. Okay, great. So let's kind of dig in. Now what we see here is, you know, kind of building out your service catalog or an a la carte bundle, and now you got to take those hourly rates and kind of come up with your pricing model. And you know, these are excerpts from a tool, a pricing calculator, but here you see set up user with a standard desktop or an executive desktop, and this may include services and product, right? But here in your service catalog, we'll just talk about a service, and the key is understanding how long it takes to do something. I think the key here is you all got to have a PSA or a ticketing system. Maybe you do projects and you're tracking time very specifically to tasks like setting up the desktops or the laptops or setting up their virtual desktops, whatever it may be. And once you understand how long it takes, that's going to really drive the overall cost from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And perhaps, you know, you've got other pricing like after 5, maybe you've got weekend pricing, but in a 9 to 5 pricing model, here you have the number of hours times your rate, what's it going to cost, and then ultimately kind of looking at not only the total cost, but adding that 30% margin. Now, that 30% is your call, right? I'm using 30% as a guideline, and you may have a lot of automation in there, so your resource time is lower. That might give you an opportunity to increase your profit to 70%, which we'll touch on a little bit later with managed services. But whenever you're putting automation, like through an RPA or an RMM into your service delivery, it can clearly impact your profit margin, because your people time would be less and less. You have a lot of AI working in automating tasks and, you know, onboarding and offboarding. So again, desired profit is key. And ultimately that hourly rate shows up at 143. Here's your profit per service and your selling price. So I used to set up a desktop, and again, this is back in the day, but mine was $750 for a new user rollout. So come up with your price to roll out a new user and ultimately determine how many will you sell. As you're working with your clients, even in a managed service relationship, they're going to do ads, moves, changes. They're going to hire new people. They're going to remove folks. You got to do onboarding and offboarding, but this will help you in forecasting revenue. You're going to win X number of new clients a month, and ultimately, when you win those clients, you're going to do a project. Or maybe as you're working your client, they're going to grow as you're with them. And what you really want to have is a pretty detailed service catalog. I know most of you use a quoting tool. You should very explicitly define your services. I do have a service catalog session we can talk about, but here you see a bunch of services, and ultimately really taking those services, I like to call them all a la carte services, because potentially you can deliver them all by themselves. Maybe do an assessment by itself. Maybe you want to do a discovery and report back to your clients. So they're all a la carte services while you're working in a managed service relationship that are potentially separate services. That's why all you can eat just doesn't fly, right? You price for the number of users, the number of devices, and then you say, here's what's included and here's what's not included. And what's usually not included are these a la carte type services. And then again, how long does it take? And I'm highlighting the fact that some of those services are delivered by different resources who cost you more or less than the other resources, and you want to properly reflect that. And of course, you may not want to show hourly rates, and that's why we're really going to kind of come up with the overall price to deliver a service and not say it's a 6-hour job, it's a 5-hour job. You're going to say it costs $750 to do this. And then ultimately, all those a la carte services can be packaged up into a repeatable project bundle, right? Because we talked earlier, as your practice build, there has to be a project component. I know I've heard folks say they don't do a project, they just go right to managed services. And I'm like, why, right? You really need to do a project separately. If you roll it into your managed services, it's going to take you longer to realize profit with your managed service client if you onboard them for free. So consider projects for each of your services and practices, and then how many are you going to deliver? If you're going to win one new client a month and your project generates $9,000 in profit and a $39,000 top line revenue, you need one a month, which will result in managed services as well. You can now budget and forecast and plan. So understanding your services and what your typical project is for, say, your target client, which is maybe a 25 user dentist office or law firm, you want to have a project that you deliver to your target audience, and how many are you going to deliver? And I talked about SaaS management. Again, thanks to Afire for sponsoring, but I think a lot of MSPs have got to start regaining control of your SaaS client ecosystems. And there are services that you can deliver in a project to say, hey, client, due to the change in environment, I got to come in and do a SaaS baseline project because I'm getting calls for SaaS that your users are using that potentially could impact your attack surface and increase it. So think about different practices as you build and expand your business, coming up with a set of services that are repeatable, maybe delivered individually, like a SaaS offboarding. Maybe it's automated 100% now with those RPA tools and AI out there. Maybe you still got some manual intervention, but hey, SaaS onboarding and offboarding is not for free, right? So once you deliver your SaaS project, the baseline, we're going to talk about SaaS managed services. And again, how long does it take to deliver the service? What's your desired profit? And then how many are you going to deliver? Maybe if you have 25, 50 clients, 10 clients, you could say, this year in the next quarter, I'm going to do a project for all my clients to regain control of the SaaS ecosystem and add it into my service desk and my support capabilities. And then AI, all the rage. Just delivered an AI practice building workshop, and again, work with actually some pretty experienced and smart folks in the AI world, and really, again, defining repeatable pro services to actually implement an AI solution. It's not trivial. And when I say how long does it take to do something, you should be deploying AI in your business or your own infrastructure or your own SaaS management platform. That's really how you're going to determine how long it takes. And as you roll it out to maybe your first tier of clients, you're going to see it's taking longer or less time. And it's your choice to change that value. Maybe you have different techs that take longer or shorter, more automation or not. But understanding how long it takes to do something starts with you using it in your business, and then again, deciding how many of them you're going to deliver. So if you have 25 or 50 clients, how many of them are ripe for you delivering say a Microsoft AI Copilot based solution, and how many are you going to go out and sell? So for every practice you build, every service you build, you can use that hourly rate calculation and not necessarily break out the hours. Just give a one price fits all, like, hey, I'm going to do this project for this amount of money, and you're going to have your own profit built in. You know how long it's going to take, and then you just got to measure it on the back end, hopefully using your project management tool, your PSA tool, whatever it may be, and determine for the next time, did you have a good pricing model, or do you have a good pricing model? And of course, make sure they're all in your CPQ system, just to kind of highlight that. Like, everybody should have a valid quoting system or a good quoting system with templates, with those projects, those repeatable bundles in there, and hopefully you just change your quantities, right? And you're doing the same project all the time. And again, I find a lot of MSPs do a lot of things for the first time, and you really want to kind of stick to what you know, and that's where you can actually plan properly. If you're doing a new project because your client trusts you, I had a wise man once tell me, double it, then charge it, because you're typically going to be incorrect on your estimates, especially if you haven't done it in your business and you're doing it for the first time out in the wild. So we've just kind of covered pricing by hourly rate, pricing your professional services across multiple practices. And let me see if there's any questions. I know I got a few flowing in. I just don't want to. So we're going to talk about travel costs in a second. Burden rates, definitely vary by region. People are kind of validating that. Definitely take them out. I like Brent is saying he uses 1,920 hours. Best way to calculate utilization other than tracking tickets, not sure, Ron, too many ways. If you've got to have a way for employees to track time, and if they're not tracking time, then you got to track, hey, I sent them over here to do this, they took 4 hours. I mean, I don't know of a better way. If anyone out there has a better way to calculate utilization other than tracking tickets or time, please let me know. And the slide deck, you're going to each get a recording of the on-demand webinar. The slide deck itself and the pricing calculators are part of a pricing course or a pricing workshop, and happy to engage with you guys on that if you want, and we'll talk about that later. So, this slide here is very interesting. I debated whether to put it in, but I think it really highlights, the birth of managed services, and what we're trying to accomplish today is what's the new pricing, what's the evolving pricing model look like? And here are some services, and I can recall many years ago, and even chatting with MSPs, within the last 5 or 10 years, and maybe some of you now who are just building your managed service practice, that you're still going out and servicing desktops in a break-fix kind of way. And this to me is like a sequence of services. Maybe when a tech goes out because you're not doing anything remotely or with an RMM, which I'm sure most of you mature and other MSPs, but back in the day, a tech would go on, learn about that asset, look at the apps, maybe this workstation got hit by a virus and they're trying to understand the apps that are installed there. Maybe they got to update the old antivirus, maybe run some patches. We see here that there's no policy management in our calculation here, because if you had it, maybe this machine wouldn't have got hit by a virus. But bottom line is, how long did it take to deliver these services to that desktop at that 110 an hourly rate? here's that travel cost that was mentioned by Brent. Not only do you calculate it on your service side of the house, and that typically goes in your overhead, but maybe you're going to charge it. And here I kind of added charging it for this break fix event, but realize your client may go, why are you charging me that? Just because I used to work out of New York City and might take an hour to get to a client. Like, they don't want to pay for your travel time. Or maybe they'll say, I want to work with an MSP who's right around the corner from me. So you got to kind of be a little bit wary of charging travel, but keep in mind it is part of your cost. And then ultimately, each of these services put together with the travel fee, this service event costs you $815. And if you want to generate some profit, say $245 for this ticket, that's $1,060 dollar invoice to your client, right? And then if you want to scale, and I certainly remember going in, and if this one machine was attacked and compromised, maybe I got to go look at all the other machines. So think about scaling break fix. This is kind of a historical view, and I certainly remember having 20 machines stacked up and having techs go and work on it. But the bottom line is clients were never happy with invoices like this, always searching for automation and how to reduce this type of work. And that's really where managed services comes in. And the birth of managed services was because, how do we do this quicker? And vendors started coming up with RMMs. I remember seeing some of the first RMM vendors showing up in the early 2000s, and guys like Enable, Kaseya, and so on. So really key to have your automation toolkit to take that break fix event and deliver it as managed services. And it starts with your PSA or service desk and ticketing system, your RMM, IT documentation, and all the kind of tools that maybe make up a traditional a traditional MSP. I like to actually say you can't be an MSP without an RMM. And certainly I think that's changing, because maybe there's MSPs just focused on infrastructure, IaaS in the cloud, but you still need to be able to monitor. So again, key tools that you need in your automation toolkit. Now there's SaaS management platforms like a Fire. You got RPA tools, AI tools. I did a panel out at Channel Partners last March. I had 3 RPA experts, and boy, oh boy, if you guys aren't looking at RPA to automate service delivery, you're missing something. Certainly AI as well. Real game changers in terms of automating service delivery, reducing the load of your billable resources, and giving you a chance to kind of generate a higher profit margin based on your services delivered, because most of the work is automated. And maybe like Nerdio doing some cloud provisioning management and optimization. I think there's a lot of tools out there to help you automate service delivery, and you tie that with, say, an ITIL best practice framework and optimize your processes. Now you're really talking managed services and really taking your business to the next level. And I think a lot of the the 30% or so mature MSPs here probably have all the right tools. They're optimizing their processes, and really they're just focused on growth. And that's what happens when you get this all in place. And maybe a quick story too. I remember at Autotask, we had PSA platform, and smaller MSPs would be like, I don't really need that yet. I'm too small. And when should I start? And I'm like, now, right? Start now so that you can grow your business and you have the right tools in place. There's no time like now to start getting into automation. So as we move into this determining managed service costs and pricing, it's still people delivering your services, except maybe they're going to be 100% utilized delivering managed services, one or more techs. Maybe you have, a service desk manager, a level 1, 2, and 3 tech, and you have a team that is delivering your managed services. Maybe you have a separate project team delivering across your different practices. So here we're going to really kind of just focus on one tech delivering managed services with the right tools, just to give illustration. But in a larger class, we could certainly talk about a blended rate across multiple resources in your managed service operations center, as I like to call it. Because once you know the resources you're dedicating to your managed services and your tools, now you just look out over your client estate and what are you charging now and what should you be charging to be profitable. And maybe that gives you an impetus to go raise your price out there, or certainly to raise your price with any new clients, because once you back into the cost per unit managed, and we're going to kind of touch on device-based or desktop-based managed service, and then move into user-based managed service pricing. The key here is, automation and your people are still involved in delivering managed services, but those automation tools are key to not only scaling, but pricing your managed services. So as we look at our pricing calculator, on the left here, you're going to pretty much see that, these are the rates we talked about earlier in terms of your break fix. In terms of your break fix, I'm having a little struggle in here hitting the right button. But anyway, you can see right here, yes, these are the rates we talked earlier with that 110 an hour cost. And here is what we're going to talk about as a managed service resource, because they still have the same 2,080 hours, the same burden, the same hours available, but they're going to be utilized 100% of the time, delivering managed services in your NOC or your managed service operations center, whatever you want to call it. And that means they're going to have more hours to build. There's less time on the beach. They're going to be not only delivering the managed services you already have, maybe they're going to figure out better and new managed services, but they're focused on managed services, which reduces their hourly cost. And as we mentioned, more billable time reduces your overhead. Perhaps you're doing less truck rolls. Now you're down to, say, a 20% overhead rate, and your cost for this resource goes from $110 to $61 an hour, and you can more than double your markup or desired profit and have a lower hourly rate while generating more revenue and more profit, servicing more machines. That's the promise of managed services. And again, the mature MSPs know it. The ones just getting started, this is where you're heading, and that's generating more profit for the same resources that might be delivering more break fix services. And ultimately, that's what we want to do, is deliver automated managed services and generate profit. So I shared that break fix example earlier. Again, the kind of these same services that we were just talking about. Now, as we say, look over your estate, right? How many workstations or users are you supporting? And in this example, I did not put a service desk price. So you see it's highlighted there in blue, because these are just delivered to the desktop, 250 desktops used by an employee. And ultimately, you're going to have eyes on your screen. You're going to be looking at tickets. And again, this is where measuring your time becomes real important, because if you've been working for a while and using tickets religiously in the right way and building out a service catalog, you're going to know how long it takes to do the typical services that you do. And in here you see 96 hours spent servicing 250 machines, ultimately leading to 1,152 hours of that managed service resource working for 250 desktops and supporting them. And I've seen, heard from MSPs, two techs supporting 5,000 workstations, 2,000. So it's up to you to determine it, because it could be different based on what you're doing. But it's really key, again, to understand how long it takes to deliver a particular service. And then ultimately that same hourly cost for the tech, maybe you now have a per device cost, you mark it up. And what you're seeing is that it'll cost you $23, but you're going to sell this for $40 per desktop. So if you're in a device billing mode, here's a way to bill per device. Just again, understanding your cost. Now, you may have 250 devices out there, and you want your managed service tech. You can go in here and just say, all right, I'm going to put all 2,080 hours or whatever my available hours are, and that rate. So maybe your cost will be higher, but the key here is understand your estate, understand how long it takes to deliver certain services, and kind of back into what you should be charging to support these desktops, because ultimately that hourly resource that's costing you $61 is now going to be able to service 250 desktops with the right tools. And more importantly, that if you actually have 500 users under management or desktops under management, and you have one tech supporting them, what happens to those numbers? Well, your cost gets cut in half and your revenue doubles. So again, much like forecasting utilization rate, you need to forecast, how many desktops am I going to be supporting in my managed service model, and price it to where you believe you can get to. And then you probably need to exceed that, because that will reduce your cost until such time as you need a body, and then continue growing, right? You're going to be step jumping along the way. So always continue to improve and automate service delivery to scale. So now we want to apply pricing to a variety of managed service bundles, and that's gonna get me to maybe my third polling question, and just to give me an idea out there of how you are pricing your managed services. I wish I had an other field in there, but if it's an other, you can select not sure. But do you price by user? Do you price by device? Perhaps you price by site and just tell a client, for each site, I'm charging this much, maybe based on a client. Maybe you charge, financial firms more. Maybe you charge, a mom and pop shop less, but, how are you pricing? User, device, site, or by client? And, again, apologize for not sure. I'm sure there's going to be folks that aren't sure of the pricing model, but, if you're not pricing by any of those four, just pop in not sure. And I really appreciate the involvement here. We're getting a great turnout on the polls, which is really great to share with the group out here, which is a big group. So we're at 60%. So if anybody wants to stick in, great. Otherwise, I'm gonna end it and we'll share. So here you see that 31% of our attendees are pricing by user, 35% by device, 27% by client, and 8% are not sure. So kind of a good mix. I think by user, I always thought it would be more prevalent. By device, and I guess maybe you could type in the question window. If you're doing it by device, you're actually telling your client, here's how many devices you have. Did you do an assessment to determine how many devices? Are you just given one price, but you know how many devices, or how many users, right? Are you detailing it, I guess, and saying this is for 50 users or up to 50 users? Just kind of good to give me some reference on your pricing model. But thanks for responding to that polling question. So let's talk about applying pricing to a variety of managed service bundles, because I think that's key. This is the essential bundle that we just were talking about. And now here it is in an automated managed service way. And I think what's very important here now is, we did add service desk into this, and we're going to outsource this particular service. It's going to cost me $12 a user because I don't want to build my service desk. So now we went from pricing per desktop. Now we're going to service the user with our service desk. And again, maybe not necessarily caring if that user has a handheld, a mobile, or whatever, but let's say they got one device. Now you're servicing the device and the user, and we went from a device-based model, in my opinion, to a per user model. And now you can begin to see, again, all the additional services that you can put into your essential bundle. And again, I used to talk about a good, better, best model. Even when I spoke about it, I did not let my client pick good, better, best. I would position the right bundle for them and say, we need this bundle. But now I ascribe, if I were to be an MSP right now, I would say, this is the essential bundle I need to deliver in order to support you in the way that you want and to deliver the outcome that you're desiring from working with me. So I would say that it's up to you to decide if you're going to do, a SOC with a particular client, an MDR, and really kind of take them to the next level in cyber. But if you don't put it into your essential bundle, maybe that's a graduated bundle. But I think you have to determine what your client wants. And here is your managed service bundle. Again, I'm highlighting that perhaps your CIO services cost you a little different. Perhaps with M365 or any SaaS application, I know there's a bunch of M365 management tools out there. Maybe you're paying for a license, not only for Office, M365, but maybe your SaaS management tool, combined with how long it takes or what you spend using those tools to manage M365. And again, this hard cost per user field is pretty important in that, you know, it's one thing to have time and how long it takes to do a particular service, but if, for example, you're using your RMM up here at $1.50 to do asset monitoring and management, are you buying it per user or device, or are you bearing it in your overhead? I always like to, you know, if I'm getting charged by my vendor per user or charged by device, that I'm going to include that hard cost in there. Most guys, I've actually heard this total of hard costs, whether it's licenses, you know, to deliver the service or actual M365 license, they don't include those products in their managed service bundle, and that's fine. When I charged 200 plus a seat, there was not one piece of hardware or software in that calculation because they already bought it, right? They're already paying for it separately. So the key here is you determine how you want to actually bill your client for your managed services, a separate product or SaaS bill or separate hard cost invoice, and then your managed service comes in to play. Ultimately, both those costs coming together, your total cost per user. And here, if you want to mark it up 70%, because I said you can more than double your markup, you're going to see your profit per user and what's your total selling price. Here's how you get to 300 a seat. If you take out the $48 of cost of hard cost, now you're probably in that, you know, 225 to 250 a user range, which includes all the services that you need to deliver to service your client. And they really don't have a choice, right? You're the IT department, you set the budget, and you kind of continue evolving. So here's your essential bundle of managed services. And again, how many clients do you have? How many of these are you going to deliver? And ultimately, how many users are you supporting? And there you could see yearly totals really growing, almost $1 million in revenue. And same thing I mentioned earlier, you build a practice, you have a project, you have managed services, come up with your SaaS managed service bundle. Maybe this is an add-on. Soon, this will probably be added into your essential bundle because you have to manage your client SaaS just like you manage their applications when it was installed locally. So here you can see again, you know, how many users are you supporting, how much time are you spending on it, and your total monthly MRR that can be added on to your managed services as you learn what your costs and profits are for delivering SaaS managed services. Same thing again here for AI. You know, there's a lot of data security, ongoing data security to do, a lot of license management, things you have to do, like are people using an AI license or not? And you got to kind of stop charging for it. Maybe you want to have data governance in play. You want to train and adopt your users and so on. So again, continue to look at the services you're delivering, the solutions you're delivering, and ultimately determine your services, your managed services, and going out there and deliver a complete set of managed services. So let me leave you with some next step actions. I got another polling question too if you want to stick around. But number one, decide to price your services right. You want to simplify managed service sales with bundles and develop hourly rates and determine what your costs and profits are for managed services and then apply it across all your clients and all your services. And interestingly, I developed 2 next step actions and forgot to get rid of that last one. So really it's decide to price your services right, understand those key variables and values impacting your pricing model, determine your costs and profits for break fix, professional services, and project bundles, and then determine your managed service cost and profits, apply it across your bundles, and then consider joining a pricing workshop that we deliver, or maybe engaging in a one-on-one. As I mentioned, this session was an excerpt from our pricing and bundling profitable services session. It's going to lead me to perhaps asking the question if you enjoyed the session or not. Let me know, but maybe you're interested in attending a group session that we put on. Maybe you're interested in a one-on-one. Maybe you're interested in both. Maybe you're all set and you feel like you're ready to go. But I've worked with thousands of MSPs over the years around the world, and I'd love to engage with some of you. And if any of you are interested, kind of respond to that poll and let me know. And if not, that's fine too. I was happy to share this content with you. I appreciate everybody out there joining the session. And I'm gonna actually, what we're doing, and Rich is gonna help, and we'll come up with one last question after this, but part of what we're trying to do here at MSP Toolkit is bring you on, MSPs who live and breathe this every day. I'm not a practitioner. I'm kind of like, the Troy Aikman right now of MSPs. I know what it takes. I've been there, I've done that. I work with a lot of MSPs, but I'm really interested in, working with MSPs, bringing them on a show and having you share your story, expand your brand. And, that is kind of, maybe my last polling question here as I thank you all for joining. Are you interested in elevating your brand and jumping on a webinar and talking to MSPs? I mean, we had a lot of folks here. Maybe you want to just kind of highlight your solutions. We can talk through pricing. We can talk through the different services you're building. And then you can kind of use it out there for driving clients, maybe talking to your vendors. So, perhaps you can respond to this one last polling question. If you're interested in jumping in and doing a webinar, love to have you do it and share your story. I see a lot out there on the web now. Everybody wants to be on TV or on the web. So this is your chance to kind of jump in and do it. So, I think it's great to actually get out there in front. So with that, I am gonna, kind of close the poll again. If you're interested, answer now. I'm gonna wait one more second. And if you're interested, I think it'll help your business. But with that, appreciate you jumping into our MSP Accelerator Quick Hit session. I say thank you, but I always like to say congratulations on taking time out of your business to work on a pricing model, working on some strategy and working on your business instead of in it. So again, thank you. And Rich, I don't know, I know it's at 12 o'clock, not sure if you're still out there. People are leaving. I don't know if there's any questions out there that, let me just see. What do you think, Rich? You see anything that's...
I just saw someone, Nathan was saying how it's so great to get back to basics. I mean, I think people are jumping off right now and going to price some models, price some bundles, and take care of their clients, right? I think that's really what we're looking at now.
Yeah, I think taking back to basics, that's really key. I think Nathan, I remember him being in one or two of my sessions over the years at Autotask. So will the slide deck? No, we talked about that.
But yeah, I think that's really it, Lenny. And I more know that, I mean, some people were asking about the poll questions that we saw. I know that we feature some of those answers out on our social media. And I know that I was just working with Noah on my team to build some slides from this session of things that we thought were insightful and we think that would be meaningful to share out. So make sure you're following MSP Toolkit on LinkedIn and for more stuff like this. And yeah, as you were mentioning, we're going to be looking to do some quick hit MSP Toolkit sessions and talks with some MSPs, just literally what are you using that you're willing to talk about? That stuff that's your special sauce, but the stuff that you're already promoting, so that we're not sharing those deep secrets, just the ones that make you proud and that your vendors, of course, would be happy to see out there champion.
Yeah, just saw Nathan jump in. Nathan, thanks for jumping in. I saw you coming in and out. You must be busy, but I see a lot of great questions in here, and what I'll do is we'll go through the questions and we'll send them out to everybody in a follow-up email. You're all going to get a link to the on-demand version. You could always hit msptoolkit.com. We've got not only this webinar, but all of our previous webinars there. And we're going to continue to add content and help you guys run a better business. So again, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Rich, thank you very much. And Noah, back in the background, appreciate it. And see you next time.